Hello and welcome to the latest episode of Looks Like We Made It. I'm Issy Howell and I'm joined by my dad Chris to talk all things video marketing. We are the father and daughter who run the video production company Howell Film, and each week we will be discussing all sorts like what happens behind the scenes on our projects, getting results from your video content, how to start using video in your business, and plenty more to come. We are always up for candidly conversing about creativity. On this episode we are answering the question, why is it important to have a strict production process? So without further ado, let's get started, and of course never miss an episode every Tuesday by giving us a follow or subscribe, as well as finding Howell Film on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter and LinkedIn. Let's go!
Let's go. So, firstly, every time you say "my dad Chris" at the intro, as you sound like older and mature and sort of very corporate and professional. I'm just sounding more like you just need to add the word "my sad old dad Chris" in there. So I think we're gonna have to change it to something more glam and ritzy and corporate.
Yes. I'm Issy Howell and I'm joined by founder and CEO.
Founder and CEO.
King.
Let's do that.
King and
like
his lordship Chris.
Right.
Well, I'm
so
sorry.
Why is it? That's all right.
Thanks for letting me know on air. That's good.
Why? Stop coughing.
I'm sorry.
Why? Why is it important to have a strict production process?
Well, because this is, to put it straight down the line, straight answer. We're sat in a new office, by the way, so we're sat in a completely new space, which is very weird. It does feel like we're not meant to be here. It feels like we just robbed the place. So you need a strict production process, because if you don't, straight to the point, your film will fall apart, because it is very, very hard to make something tangible and make a really good narrative-driven cinematic film without knowing the basics of where you are, why you're doing it, what you're doing, and having a message, and also editing it effectively.
Well, it's like cooking. It's like any experiment that you've got a method and you've got all your ingredients, just like cooking. Because essentially, if you didn't have a strict production process plan to follow, it would be a bit like turning up with a box of raisins, some eggs, I don't know, some duck legs, and a load of stuff out your cupboard and saying, "Oh, make me a wedding cake." It ain't going to happen. And I think.
Well, you haven't tried my cakes. So.
Well, exactly. I think. Let me finish. Why are we giddy? I don't know why we're so giddy today. Too much coffee. The issue. So the key thing is, your production process must be strict. Because in reality, like a lot of things, and like I've been known to say at length in the past, the key is the planning, and the old cliche about failing to plan, you will plan to fail, is really important. Because if you haven't dealt with each tiny element at the outset, what will happen is that tiny element will grow and grow and grow and become a big element on the shoot, and everyone will look at each other and it'll all become expensive and no one will know what to do, and everyone will look for someone else to blame, and the whole thing will turn to not very goodness.
That's a good summary. I think that's why pre-production is essential. Like when we say pre-production, that is a whole process, a bit like post-production. They're two, but before. That is essentially a process that can go on for weeks. It can be a day, it could be weeks, it could be months, depending on the scale of the project. And I think what tends to happen is at the start of the project, if you get the idea and you know exactly what you want to do, working with people like us, where we will help you develop those ideas in a realistic sense. So, you know, if you want to create a Hollywood blockbuster, obviously the budget has to reflect that, but we have to make sure that practically those ideas and those creative concepts can be delivered. And I think that is the key for pre-production, is thinking, how do I turn that idea where people imagine the finished product before they've even seen it or had a go at making it, and pre-production essentially is about taking that idea and thinking, how do I practically deliver that so it's as close to what we wanted it to be? And sometimes that process is moving as far away from that idea as we possibly can and thinking of alternatives. But pre-production goes into that logistical element of thinking, how do I take this idea and make it a reality within the practical environment that I'm working in? That's the thing that, because it's now December, that is the thing that we find a lot, where if someone wants to do a really big advert or a big shoot and it's the middle of winter, you have to think, okay, if it's Christmas, are there going to be lights up everywhere? Is everyone going to be in Christmas jumpers? It's thinking about the practical realities of where you're actually doing the job.
And you only get like 40 minutes daylight.
Well. Exactly, because we're basically in Iceland now.
A day.
And I think, and that's the thing with pre-production. It's not only developing ideas, but it's also getting as much sorted out as you possibly can. The worst thing that can happen is when you're doing a shoot and you send filmmakers somewhere, or you show up to a location and no one knows what's going on, and the venue owner might look at you like, get out, what are you doing here? And it's about covering those bases. It's about just ringing people up, asking the questions, getting stuff booked in and organised.
So who would you involve in your pre-production process? Would it be just internal people, so our filmmakers, our sound people, animators, visual effects people, runners, etc., or do you include and involve the client in that normally?
I think it's a mixture. I think I rely on filmmakers, people in our industry to direct me in terms of what they would need to do the job. So we end up being in the production element, being that kind of middle ground between what the client wants to see and what the client expects versus what our filmmakers can practically deliver. Often those do line up, because during that creative planning process, me and you know kind of what is a red flag and what can go ahead and stuff. So we'll steer people more in that direction. But it's a bit about, it's kind of finding that balance between what the filmmaker needs to do the job versus what the client wants.
So where's the line in terms of pre-production between kind of like, would things like, I don't know, not necessarily film-related things be included in pre-production? So, you know, logistical things like, I don't know, where people are going to go to the bathroom, where people are going to break out. Is there shelter if it throws down rain? Where we're gonna plug kit in to charge batteries?
Well, this is where you taking that information from the client, taking it from the filmmaker, you then run ahead and think, okay, realistically, how much equipment will we need? How many batteries will we need? You have no idea how many batteries we'll need for a job, or how many cables, how many this, and you go through that process of, the first thing I would do is I would take those ideas to the filmmaker, or to the people who I would basically book in the filmmakers for that shoot and the crew for that shoot. And then when normally the client will have an idea of where they want it filmed, they might be at their offices, they might know someone who's got a venue that we can film at. And once you've established that location, either the client, a lot of the time they tend to just say, I know this person, I'll drop them a line, and we just get that information and we show up at the right time. But a lot of the time we're asked for risk assessments. That will obviously, because there's a lot of equipment and filmmakers that might show up to a place that they don't work at. So we got to do a bit of a health and safety check, which is really important. But as well as that, I think there are practical things, which is why what I give to the filmmaker before they show up on a shoot is a call sheet from us. And in that call sheet, it essentially has all the information about the job that they need to know from us, that the client has given us. So that is practical information like where they're going, when they're going, what they need to bring with them, whether they're using some of their own kit or we're supplying them with our equipment. Normally it's the latter, because we've got so much of it. But then within that as well, it does go into those other details like phone numbers and addresses and Google Maps screenshots and what 3 words, and as much information as we can give them, as well as things like weather, like what's the forecast meant to be for the day that you're filming. If it's going to be absolutely chucking it down, it's about letting them know that information so that they're prepared to respond to it.
And do you have a contingency generally if it's forecast to be terrible weather? what do we do? Do we bail out? I mean, I'm only asking the question from a punter's perspective here.
We would try, I think, well, as from previous experience during the UCI Road World Championship in 2019, as you can remember,
I do remember being in a ditch in about 2 foot of cold water.
That was torrential rain, but we did the job, and that's obviously not saying that we will stick out any terrible weather at all times, but we'll do what we can to do the job. And I think as long as the filmmaker is aware and we're aware of what's going on, the thing that I find particularly with pre-production is anything to do. The client should never keep a secret from us at all. Like there shouldn't be any surprises with us at all, because we've had that in the past where we've been working on events and someone might be doing a performance and it'll be like, "Oh, they've got a surprise for you" and stuff, and that makes me nervous. We don't like surprises because we need to be able to react to things before you've even thought of them.
Yeah, I mean, the surprise for the live stuff, for the event type work, the surprises are for the audience. The surprises aren't for the colleagues and for the professional crew.
Yeah.
I mean, we've had that in the past where they've had surprise guests on stage, or they've got a surprise set, or hey, we're bringing on a dirty great harp that we haven't mic'd up or whatever. So yeah, we're aware of that, and you're right. I think that the client has got to give us every scrap of information, and often things that people wouldn't ordinarily think is important. Stuff like, are there any plug sockets anywhere? And then to aid us building our risk assessment, where are the trip hazards? What are the issues? Is there any parking? We've got a van loaded full of crew and kit. Where we're going to stick it. And it's all practical things like that.
I think, and lunch breaks, and if they're going to get fed and stuff like that. And well, my mother can provide full catering. She always offers that. But yeah, and the thing with pre-production is what I like to establish is that we don't ask these questions on the day, and I think that's that we don't want to be showing up to a shoot and bewildering the client with loads of questions going, well, where do you want us now? What are we doing? What are we doing? You want to essentially get all of the questions you need out the way, preferably weeks before the actual shoot, because what happens is that you ask all these questions, maybe on a Zoom call, phone call, face to face, you get all the information you need, and then the client can go away and crack on with their day. And when we then show up to the shoot, we do the job, we go home, the client will be there going, well, I didn't even see you were there. You just did it so well.
We often get that they hardly knew you were there.
But that's because we've got all the information we need. There's nothing worse than feeling like we have to bombard people with loads of questions and stuff right in the moment. It just makes it stressful. Pre-production is essentially there to make the actual job itself stress-free.
I think a pre-production checklist as well, which I think is a really valuable thing as well, where you literally write down, kit, crew, eventualities, everything you could possibly think of, and you go through it in detail, you tick them off, and it might seem a bit laborious and not very creative, but I think it's so essential. It's proven so essential in the past that, have you actually got everything you could possibly think of dealt with before the big day? Because as we've discovered, whenever you're out on a set, whether it's a live event or whether it's a promotional film or an advert or whatever it is, it takes on a pace of its own. It suddenly things. It's like the quickening. It's like Highlander. Everything takes on a new pace, and before you know it, you're up and running. If it's an event, you've got the crowd are in, or the talent's on the stage, and you're in it, and it's rolling. So it's really, really vital that this pre-production side of things is done, as you say, often days, weeks in advance before.
Well, it's unfortunately the thing that's really overlooked, because people don't realise that you have to do it, and that's the same for even people in our same industry might not do as much pre-production as they should have, because it isn't that exciting. It's more like project management work. It's not the filming and the editing. It's more desk based. It's more kind of just sending emails, phone calls, and stuff like that. But you do it, and once it's done, you are so grateful for it when you're on that shoot. And when you've got, in our job and in our industry and in Howell Film, it's when you've got the information in front of you, it's a cakewalk in that respect. Like when you've got everything you need, we can do everything the way we want to do it. But the thing you just want to avoid is pestering people on the day for loads of information. And the moment you're not prepared is the moment it's just ridiculously stressful and it's not worth it.
I think you're right. I think the key thing is that as an organisation, we're good at reacting. We're good at being able to be flexible, but we can't possibly make it up as we go along.
God, no.
The two are not the same. You know, being flexible on the day and kind of being in the moment and accommodating the client is one thing, but winging it and making it up as you go along is definitely not us, and is not a thing anyone should be doing.
But there's obviously some projects where you are a bit more by the seat of your pants a little bit, because it might be that you are at an event and when it's happening in the moment, you can't really control what's happening around you, so you have to kind of just go with it. So sometimes, you know, you might go with slightly less information, but that's because you don't know how the day's going to go. But you do know generally what you want to achieve by the end of that day. And I think that's really important. There's no point just showing up to an event and just throwing a camera out there and seeing what happens. There has to be a final like angle, really. But that was really all about pre-production. I mean, do we even get on to post-production?
Maybe it's another podcast.
Maybe we make a separate podcast.
Let's do a separate podcast.
Well, there we go.
So pre-production. So everything before.
Yeah,
Stick around.
It's really important. Well, and and if you are obviously wanting to do your own stuff or make your own stuff, pre-production can happen on a really small scale as well. Even if you're about to make an Instagram reel or you're about to make a little video for your social media, just before you pick up that camera, just think practically about what you want to achieve and plan ahead, even if it's just the night before, thinking, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? Because even that in itself is pre-production. It's planning for some kind of production you're going to put on. But my last question then,
okay, go on.
I have to ask you a question every single time. This one is obviously incredibly professional.
Go on.
If you were a biscuit, what biscuit would you be?
If I was a biscuit, what biscuit would I be?
Because that when I had my first job interview within the creative industry, that was the question they asked me, and I remember my heart sank, but it stuck with me since.
Well, you see, I'm going to be controversial here because I'd probably be something like a shortbread,
Really?
like a shortbread finger. But but is that even a biscuit? I don't know.
Well, to the Scottish it is. That is a Scottish thing, isn't it?
So
Shortbread.
I'd say a versatile, because when you've got it, yeah.
See why? This is why I was on the spot when I was in that job interview, and they asked me because I went, "I don't know, custard cream because I'm sweet."
But then questions like that, I don't know.
Well, I I think if I was going to be a biscuit, I would probably be a bourbon, because they're the underdog of the whole thing. Everyone goes straight for the custard cream. No one goes for the bourbon. But you're either a bourbon or a custard cream. But I'm going to go that.
Or maybe I might be like just a digestive, a versatile digestive.
A versatile
Stick a bit of cheese on. You've got.
Ooh,
yeah, you
what?
can. Seriously, you can.
We've turned eyes of other people in this room by just saying cheese on a digestive.
Try it. Trust me.
Hell no, that's not going to happen. Okay, so that's a discussion for another day. So that was everything for today. Thank you so much for listening. If you are listening on Apple Music or Apple Podcasts, please give us a rate and review. You can listen to this wherever you get your podcasts, and also on www.howellfilm.co.uk. If you want to be on the podcast or you got a question for us, do let us know. We will try our best to answer it in as professional a way as we can. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday. So bye.